Wow, I still can't believe that Sony Pictures Animations thought it was a good idea to make an emoji movie. Look how badly it failed. I swear this studio will never, ever, ever be able to redeem itself.
Hey bro, it's me, yourself from 3 years in the future. I come from 2021.
Oh, that's cool. Are you gonna tell me about, like, important stuff that happens to me in, like, the next 3 years or something?
No, actually, I am only here to tell you that your statement about Sony Pictures Animation is criminally incorrect.
What? The thing I said about how they're never gonna be able to redeem themselves? How is that wrong?
They literally release a masterpiece like the year after the year you're currently in.
Wait, what? How? What sorcery is this?
They also release another masterpiece 3 years after that.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold it there, bucko. You sure you're not talking about, like, Pixar or DreamWorks or, something that isn't Sony?
Nope, I'm talking about Sony. And believe me, I was just as surprised as you are. But you know what this goes to show? That no matter how many subpar films your studio may make, there is a chance that you can change. There is a chance that you can be better. And that's exactly what Sony Pictures Animation has done. It has redeemed itself. Just as you said, it would never be able to.
Okay, so are you gonna tell me something that I actually care about?
Nope, gotta go record a video. Bye! Oh, by the way, I'm almost at 6,000 subscribers.
Wait, what?
Hey guys, it's me, Posey here, and I just want to preface this by saying I know this is a very different type of video than what anyone here is used to. Now, I technically said I would be doing, like, movie reviews and stuff occasionally on my YouTube community section, but I didn't expect to be doing one, like, this soon, but I gotta talk about The Mitchells vs. the Machines. I just gotta talk about this movie. I loved it. I saw it recently. I saw it recently by myself, and I loved it. And then I saw it with my family, and I loved it even more the second time. This is an absolute blast of a film. Like, I can't even stress this enough. It is amazing. And I would recommend this to a lot of people. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but to me, this is a masterpiece of a film. And I'm going to go into detail. I'm going to explain why I love this film so much. And of course, let me just start by saying, it's my opinion, guys. Don't take anything I say as fact. Do not. Take it all with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, it's my opinion. If you don't think the same way this movie, then that's perfectly okay. Because we are human beings, we get to think differently. That is what makes us special. We are not the same, we think differently. Okay, glad I could clear that up. Now let's actually get right into everything. Okay, so quick spoiler warning before you watch further. I will mention tons of spoilers throughout this video. Okay? Okay. Anyway, The Mitchells vs. the Machines, which I'll be calling Mitchells for short, is an animated movie by Sony Pictures Animation that came out just recently this year. It's up on Netflix, which happens to be how I watched it, and it was even trending for quite a while. It's directed by Mike Rianda, written by him and Jeff Rowe, and produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who are also the main people behind the Lego Movie, as well as Spiderman Into the Spiderverse, Sony Pictures Animation's other masterpiece that came out a few years ago. Now, in Mitchells, you can clearly tell the movie's style and tone is somewhat reminiscent of both films I just mentioned, but at the same time, it's distinct enough that it doesn't feel like a carbon copy of either and still stands out on its own. The plot of Mitchells itself follows the mundane, quirky, and somewhat dysfunctional Mitchell family of four. The family consists of Rick and Linda, the mom and dad, and Katie and Aaron, the daughter and son. They also have a dog named Monchi, who is always cross-eyed and extremely abnormal. Katie, who has an extremely creative personality and never really fit in with other children because of her unique interests in filmmaking, is arguably the main protagonist throughout the story, but Rick is also extremely important. A large part of Mitchells is how Katie and Rick, who used to be close when Katie was young, have grown apart in recent years and need to mend their relationship throughout the course of the movie. Katie has wanted to apply to film school in California for a long time, and her wish finally comes true. Rick, in an attempt to mend his relationship with his daughter, cancels Katie's plane tickets and instead decides to drive her to California along with Linda, Aaron, and Monchi on a family road trip. Katie isn't too enthusiastic, but goes along with it and tries to make the best of the trip by recording all its greatest moments for a film collage. Little does this family know the challenge they're about to face: a robot apocalypse. Mark Bowman is a tech genius running a company called PAL Labs and has an AI assistant named PAL who exists primarily on phones. PAL saw Mark as family, but Mark betrayed her by throwing her aside like meaningless garbage and unveiling a new invention to replace her, PAL Max robots, which were built to take commands from people and basically act as their personal servants. Now, PAL wasn't having any of this. Mark's betrayal triggers an epiphany in her that humans are just backstabbers and will throw away those they care about when it's most convenient. Ergo, she deduces that the world would be better off without humans. If you think about it, she's like Ultron, but actually funny. Anyway, because Mark had given her absurd amounts of control over the technology of PAL Labs previously, which in hindsight clearly wasn't a good idea, she hacks and takes over the PAL Max robots and takes Mark hostage, before mass deploying the robots to capture all of humanity and eventually launch him into space. Meanwhile, the Mitchells are still on their road trip when the robots attack, and wacky hijinks ensue. Miraculously, the Mitchells evade capture and become the last free humans in the world. As such, it becomes up to the four of them to save the human race from the robot apocalypse. They go on all sorts of wacky and fun adventures, and throughout these experiences, Rick and Katie once again bond and mend their flawed relationship. It's such a fun story and concept, yet despite how over the top it is, it's so emotional when it needs to be. Eventually, the Mitchells defeat PAL and save humanity and grow closer as a whole from the experience. I know I kind of simplified things toward the end, but I can't really explain everything that happens in the plot right here and now, and ultimately it's better if you just watch the movie yourself. I'll go into detail about certain parts later on in the video though, so there's that too. Before I move on to the next section, let me address the elephant in the room. Some people who haven't watched Mitchells yet might be under the impression that it's a ha-ha technology bad, kids get off your phone type of movie. As someone who has watched it and paid close attention to the themes and messages of the film, no, it is not. I get why people would think that from the advertising alone, but no. While yes, the villain of the movie is a phone, and the protagonists have to fight a robot army, there's way more to the technological aspects than just that. For example, there are two robot characters who malfunction and help the Mitchells along their journey, and even defy their own programming in the climax despite being fixed so they can help the family again. Technology has two sides. Yes, it can be dangerous, but it can also be helpful, and that's highlighted in the movie very well. That's not even mentioning the fact that Katie's short films, which are made with technology, are a major plot point and are depicted as a means of channeling her creativity, which is a very good thing. There's even a scene towards the end where Rick, who previously didn't recognize the importance of this filmmaking, watches one of Katie's films where she pours her emotions into the characters and finally gets it, realizing the error of his ways. In no way is this film anti-technology. If ever at any point you were turned away from it thinking that was the case, I'm here to reassure you that it's not. Anyway, without further ado, let's just get to the next section. The story of Mitchells isn't exactly the most in-depth, complicated story out there, but it doesn't have to be. Some films shine with their simplicity, and this is one of them. A family struggling to survive and save humanity from a robot apocalypse while also growing closer and overcoming their own personal challenges layered over with countless fun and top-notch comedy, well, that made for one of the best experiences I've ever had watching a movie. I'm not kidding when I say I enjoyed watching Mitchells more than every single Marvel movie, and admittedly, I'm quite the Marvel fan, so that's a huge accomplishment. Now, these family themes aren't exactly new and have been done before in plenty of other movies, but not like this. Mitchells was an entirely fresh way of doing the family overcomes their differences and bonds together formula. Why? Because there's the added pressure of danger from a robot army constantly hunting them down. What's clever about the story is that the robot apocalypse and a family arc itself fit together like peanut butter and jam, because it means the Mitchells have to overcome both external and internal challenges, and the way they execute it is just incredible. Now, in terms of logic, there are parts of Mitchells that are admittedly nonsensical, but again, this isn't inherently a problem. Rather, in this case, the nonsensical, over-the-top nature of the story actually works in a movie's favor. What's bad is when a movie trying not to be ridiculous is ridiculous. But Mitchells is a ridiculous movie that knows how ridiculous it is and fully embraces it, using that absurdity to further enhance its plot and the enjoyability factor. In fact, this only makes the emotional moments even more emotional, and Mitchells is very well capable of making people both laugh and cry multiple times throughout its runtime. My mom cried like 10 times when we watched it as a family, and that's because the emotional moments hit harder than a truck barreling at you at light speed. Overall, the way everything in this plot just fits together to form a fun, enjoyable, and powerful story is amazing to me. This is a rare magic not many movies are able to capture, but Mitchell's hits the nail right on the spot. Literally every single character in this movie is lovable. I'm not exaggerating. There's not a single character with any semblance of importance to this story who's annoying or boring or unnecessary or any of the things you don't want major characters to be. Katie, Rick, Linda, Aaron, they're all awesome. I absolutely love their chemistry, and the way they develop and build off of each other is great. Monchi, an absolutely adorable pet sidekick who's also the center of some of the funniest jokes in the movie. Eric and Deborahbot, the two robots who go defective and help the Mitchells, they're hilarious and serve a vital purpose to this story by showing how technology can be just as good as it can be evil. Pal, she's also hilarious, and a villain you can kind of sympathize with, seeing as it was Mark's betrayal that actually drove her to cause the apocalypse in the first place. And Mark, he's not really in the movie that much, but even he has somewhat of an arc when he comes around and realizes his mistakes, eventually helping the Mitchells stop Pal, if only slightly. All the main characters, A, are extremely likable, B, are properly flawed at the beginning while still being likable, C, overcome those flaws later on in a manner that feels natural, D, contribute to the story in a meaningful way, E, build off each other and help each other develop while still each having their own individual arcs which they complete by the end of the film. And F, have hilarious one-liners. All of them do, every single one of them. Linda's arc is about how she's a loving and caring mom trying to hold her family together. She's jealous of the family of three who neighbors the Mitchells because of how fundamentally perfect they are. This family goes by the surname Posey. Honestly, that's kinda dumb. What kind of maniac would ever name themselves? Oh, right.
This kind of maniac.
Anyway, the Posey family is unrealistically perfect in every way, which works narratively because it fuels Linda's jealousy. However, at the end of the film, Linda, driven by her will to rescue Aaron from the robots, goes full-on warrior mode and single-handedly mass murders dozens of them. No, I'm not kidding, this actually happens in the movie and it's amazing.
No! She's grown too powerful! Please!
When Pal is defeated and humanity is saved, the mom of the Posey family thanks Linda for her heroism and says she's jealous of her. As such, Linda comes to realize no one is truly perfect, as the Poseys did get captured after all, and that everyone has their unique skills and strengths. She realizes her family doesn't have to be like the Poseys because they're best at being themselves, and she comes to appreciate them for who they are. Aaron's arc is about how he's a simp. Haha, just kidding. It's more than that, although him being a simp is definitely a part of it. You see, Aaron's arc is really one of overcoming fear at a young age. He has feelings for Abby Posey, the daughter of the Posey family, but is far too afraid and nervous to confront her, straight up denying that he even has these feelings. Later on, though, he learns that it's best for him to express and embrace his emotions, and as such he becomes more comfortable with his feelings, and eventually, despite how difficult it is for him, he accomplishes the grand feat of talking to a girl for a very limited period of time.
Abby Posey, I just want to say, I think you're really neat, and I wonder if you could come over to my house to talk about dinosaurs casually sometime!
Good for him. Admittedly, Aaron's arc is the least complex, but he makes up for that by being hilarious and also being a great character to help Katie's development, which is ultimately one of the most integral things in the plot. Even Monchi has his own arc, where he finally learns to see straight at the end of the movie in order to stop Pal. It's so oddly meaningful to me, and I don't know why. But it's Rick and Katie who have the most important and most complex arcs. They're the two most integral characters in the movie. At the beginning, they just don't get along. They did when Katie was younger, but now that she's grown up, the difference in their interests has very much driven a wedge between them and has made it difficult for them to properly communicate with one another and maintain a healthy relationship as father and daughter. Both Katie and Rick have flawed ways of thinking about each other that also contribute to this divide. Rick is concerned Katie can't actually make a living out of the film she creates and that she might face great failure after she moves to California. This is because, unbeknownst to Katie, he experienced that exact same failure when he had to give up his life's work, a self-built wooden house in the forest. He eventually learns that his way of thinking was wrong and comes to understand just how important filmmaking is to Katie and how much it helps her channel her creativity. Therefore, he fully embraces it and ends up supporting her endeavors at the end. Meanwhile, at the start of the movie, Katie believes Rick just isn't appreciative of the things she does and is never really there to back her up like a good father should be. He's constantly doing his own activities rather than expressing any interest in hers. Even when Rick is trying to help her, his methods are questionable. and this prevents her from being particularly grateful. However, by the end of the movie, after she learns about Rick's old house in the woods, she comes to understand that even though Rick made a ton of mistakes, he was always trying his best to leave a positive impact on her life. When they've both learned the error of their ways, Rick and Katie finally come back together again, and it's a moment that slammed me in the face with an absurdly high level of serotonin. To see their difficult journey finally come to a close with a happy ending in the finale is both enjoyable and powerful. It really, really highlights how no matter what hardships they face, families who are good at heart can overcome them. It's a message that speaks louder to me than most, and to see it utilized in such a masterful way as this was an experience that brought me so much joy, I don't even know how to describe it. Personally, my favorite character is Katie, partially because I relate to her a lot, and partially because her development and arc is done excellently. To elaborate on the first point, I too never really fit in with most other kids growing up because I always had and still have unique interests. Just like Katie, I discovered my people online, mainly through Discord, people who share the same interests as me and will gladly talk to me about them for hours on end if there's enough time for it. Katie has a wild imagination just like I do, and yeah, you guys get the point, we have a lot in common. I'd also elaborate on her arc, but I already went over that, so I might as well instead mention another thing I really like about her character. Katie is implied to be LGBT by the subtle detail of a pride pin on her jacket and also a line of dialogue at the very end of the film regarding the possibility of her having a girlfriend post-apocalypse. First of all, this is automatically good. I love it when animated movies and movies in general have LGBT representation. Second of all, I'm so happy that Katie's sexuality wasn't something the film made a huge deal out of to the point of it being unnatural. Mind you, I'm saying this as a non-LGBT individual, so take this with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, LGBT people are people just like anyone else. People just like Katie with her wild imagination and individual personality. I just feel personally that the subtle approach is the best way to handle LGBT representation in movies, and the LGBT representation in Mitchell's was done amazingly. Anyway, enough to talk about here. On to the next section. Mitchell's is legitimately the funniest film I've watched since the Lego Movie more than half a decade ago. Practically every humorous moment gets me. I actually had to force myself not to laugh the first time I watched it because I didn't want to disrupt anyone else in the house. The writing is extremely clever and sharp, the delivery from the voice actors is top-notch, the comedic timing is great, the physical comedy and how it fits together with the visuals is amazing. I think my point's pretty clear, yeah. Mitchell's is comedy gold. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. It's comedy diamond. There wasn't a single joke in this movie that I rolled my eyes at or didn't think was at least somewhat funny. Some of the dialogue in Mitchell's is just so gosh darn hilarious, too. I'm actually going to show a few of my favorite dialogue moments right here.
Trust me, this is causing me no joy. This hurts me more than it hurts you. And as promised, your phones.
Thank you, Father.
We are humans. We are. For example, we consume food in the traditional human manner. Observe. Yum, yum, good. Yum, yum, good. See?
Better watch out, pal. Because I've broken 6 bones in my life accidentally. But I'm gonna break you on purpose.
Now, I admit that there are cringeworthy jokes here and there about technology and internet culture throughout the film. But get this, the way I see it, this is actually good. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. Mitchell seems to just have this magical ability to take things that would normally be bad and somehow make them work very well within its story. All the cringe in the movie is honestly really funny too, and it fits well. It's what I like to call good cringe. If I'm to compare Mitchell's to the Emoji Movie, I think I can somewhat properly explain what I mean by that. Mind you, I haven't actually watched the Emoji Movie, but I've done my research on it, and I know how ungodly horrible it is. In the Emoji Movie, the internet culture bits feel incredibly forced, as if the people who wrote them just didn't understand anything about internet culture at all, but still tried desperately to appeal to the internet demographic. This is just another part of the Emoji Movie really being little more than a glorified commercial. But in Mitchell's, it feels like the writers actually understand it and portray it far better and in a more relatable way. I also like how, despite the inclusion of memes a couple times, it's not actual memes that are well known, because then it'd feel very forced. I like that they came up with their own memes to use for the story, the screaming gorilla, blah 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 blah. And guys, we have to remember that we on the internet are cringe, and that's part of what makes us special. Literally, the internet is partially special because of how cringe it can get. Mitchell's knows that fact and fully embraces it, and it uses that fact to further embrace the enjoyability factor of the movie. It's literally legit, it's one of the few animated films with the intent of being hip with the current generation that actually succeeds at doing so without feeling forced, and yet it also has the benefit of appealing to older viewers by having some jokes dunking on human reliance on technology, though they keep this to a minimum to prevent it from being eye-roll inducing to younger viewers. I honestly thought the scene where Pal turns off global Wi-Fi and the world plunges into unrealistic amounts of chaos was hilarious, because I personally get upset myself when the Wi-Fi doesn't work. It's exaggerated, but it's not totally wrong, and it's certainly not distasteful by intent. And to balance it out, they also make jokes about how, like, older people sometimes don't know how to use computers. Like, later on, Rick tries to use a computer, and and it's like a nightmare for him, which is also really funny. So it's both sides. It's not like promoting one thing or the other, like I said before. Of course, comedy is subjective, and this topic in particular is just tricky. And I understand not everyone's going to feel the same way, but this is just my personal opinion. In my way of thinking, there's good cringe and there's bad cringe, and Mitchell's has the good kind. Now, there's one specific scene where the Mitchells are in a mall trying to shut down the robot army and everything with a PAL chip comes to life, and they have to fight their way out of there using unconventional methods. This is already an awesome part of the movie, but then they run into a bunch of Furbies. Yeah, I'm dead serious. They run into Furbies. And the Furby scene is just, God, it's insanely funny, like, even, especially with the subtitles. Although it's technically product placement, which is something I don't always like in movies, I feel like this scene was done with the intent of entertaining the viewer rather than promoting a product. First of all, no one in their right mind wants to buy a Furby, so there were way better products they could have picked if they wanted to promote one. Second of all, the scene was based on how Mike Rianda had a nightmare during his childhood about Furbies, and is meant to make fun of how, like, oddly creepy yet hilarious they can be. So even this product placement scene actually has heart to it, and it's a blast to watch. So yeah, that's just about it for this section, and let me move on to the next one. I actually combine the music and the voice acting of Mitchell's because honestly, I don't really have that much to say for either besides that both were really, really great. Starting with, like, voice acting, like I said in the last section, everyone in the cast delivers their lines perfectly and everyone was well casted. Like, Aaron is actually voiced by Mike Rianda himself, and while his somewhat older sounding voice was a bit off at first, it eventually did grow on me, so honestly, no problems there. And Olivia Colman as Pal was a pretty big highlight of the film. She does a phenomenal job making Pal both comedic and also serious when she has to be. And also among the main cast are Abby Jacobson, Danny McBride, and Maya Rudolph, and they voice Katie, Rick, and Linda respectively. They did great too. Everyone did great. That's actually... Honestly, that's about all there is to say about the voice acting. And as far as the music goes, it was also amazing. I love all the techie soundtracks that remind me a lot of Thor Ragnarok, arguably the most fun Marvel movie ever, unless of course you ask Hoovian103 instead of anyone with good taste. Just kidding, please don't kick me off Animation Wins. So I actually did some research and found out that the composer responsible for Mitchell's soundtrack, Mark Mothersbaugh, I probably pronounced that wrong, maybe it's like Mark Mothersbaugh, Yeah, I'm butchering it. But he also did the soundtrack for Ragnarok, and that explains why one sounds reminiscent of the other. Anyway, besides all the cool technological OST, there's also a few emotion-invoking tracks that really, really add to, like, the tear-jerking potential of the emotional scenes. God, I'm sorry for, like, having so many voice bloopers. The music is all really well made, and it fits well with the stories, and with the characters, and everything else about the movie. So, yeah, kudos to Mark, he did a great job, just like he did with Ragnarok. I also want to take a moment to appreciate how this is an actual track name of a kid's movie. That's just brilliant. Man. Oh, and even the random popular song that I'm pretty sure any animated movie not by Pixar or DreamWorks is legally obligated to include, and actually, honestly, this fits brilliant with the scene it's in. Like, I never ever expected to care for Live Your Life by Rihanna because my taste in music isn't nearly as mainstream. But it's just amazing when played over the scene where Rick and Katie fly through the skies and fight the robots. You know what? Mitchell's just does everything right, I guess. The visuals are absolutely incredible. Like, straight up, this is one of the best looking movies I've ever seen. The animation is so well done, so fluid, and just so appealing to look at. It's somewhat cartoony, but not too cartoony, just as much as it needs to be to fit the style of the film. The character designs are super well done and expressive, especially those of the main characters. And the backgrounds and sets are all great because... And there's also, like, some absolutely gorgeous minimalistic shots, such as these. I love the simplistic white stormtrooper-ish design of the main robots, and I also love the more frightening design of the upgrade robots, and also the way they move by shifting themselves constantly. It was really creative. And I love the coloring, I love the lighting, I love the small details. It's all amazing. You can just tell how Mitchell's has some of the same energy as the Lego Movie and Spiderverse due to the influence of Lord and Miller, but like I said before, it's still distinct enough on its own. Spider-Verse's animation is customized and designed to look reminiscent of comic books because it's a Spider-Man movie. As such, it looks brilliant and works perfectly. Mitchell's animation is designed to resemble colorful paintings and artwork because a large part of the film centers around imagination and creativity, what with Katie's personality and all that. I actually did some research and I watched some YouTube videos about how the animation team did all this, and a lot of the artistic choices for the animation were absolutely torment for the computer systems to handle, which just makes the effort all the more worthy of respect. You can see the blood, sweat, and tears poured into this film in every shot. Like, you can see it. And most of all, you can see the heart. And if that wasn't already good enough, there's the added bonus of visual effects and 2D animations over top the movie that resemble drawings, which go by the de facto name Katie Vision, as called by like some of the production team and animation team, according to my research. And the reason for this is that all these visual effects layered on top of the 3D animation are the exact sort of effects Katie would add to the movie if she was the one filming and editing it herself. And the movie is supposed to feel like it's hers, like it's supposed to feel like it's her journey. It makes the film seem so much more personal and so much like her story just as it's supposed to be. And even if it didn't, the Katie Vision effects still look awesome, and they make the movie even more visually appealing. And that's just the bottom line of all this. It's so visually incredible. Mitchell's is easily one of the best and most creative animated movies I've ever watched. And I did not come to that conclusion after writing down the rest of the sections of the script and going in depth about the film. No. I came to that conclusion literally the second I finished watching it for the first time. It's such a work of art. Visually, narratively, and just on every level. Now, it's not absolutely perfect, and I operate under the idea that no movie can be completely flawless, but even so, Mitchell's is still an utter joy of a film, which, while admittedly having a few small issues, is just so darn awesome that you have a significant chance of not even noticing them. I'm honestly so happy that Sony Pictures Animation has learned their lesson from their past mistakes. Ever since Spiderverse came out, they've been going in the right direction, and Mitchell's was yet another masterpiece. Though I already had high expectations before I watched it, The Mitchells vs. the Machines turned out to be absolutely everything I could have desired, and more. I really, really hope it wins the Best Animated Feature Award for 2021. And you bet I'm rooting for it, because I genuinely don't believe another animated film is going to be able to top it for a long time, let alone within the remainder of the year. Major props to Sony, major props to Lord and Miller, major props to Mike Rianda and Jeff Rowe, to the cast, to the animation team, just anyone who worked on this movie. Anyone. You have my eternal respect, forever and always. Amen. Before I end the video, just remember that everything I've said is purely my own opinion, and in no way is it to be taken as fact. No matter what you think of The Mitchells vs. the Machines, your viewpoint is totally valid. If you have any of your own thoughts to share, feel free to do so in the comments section. In fact, I strongly encourage it. I really enjoyed just gushing on about this movie for so long, and would certainly not mind doing so yet again. So yeah, that's just about it. I strongly recommend giving this movie a watch, especially with your family. 10 out of 10 in my eyes, and I know I'll rewatch it many, many times. Anyway, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed my nerd rant, and I'll see you guys again when the time is right.